Those are much cheaper, much simpler.
Those are level 2 chargers.
Yeah, they take forever.
15.
Yeah.
You get 15% an hour on a level 2.
The big problem with them, according to my EverSource engineer, which I believe, because I was asking him, with the houses, like, how is that? How you guys doing? Are these houses hurting you guys? He said, nah, he's not worried about houses. He's worried about fast chargers. He goes, the amount of energy that they consume so quickly, he says, it's not our grid really can't deal with that right now. He said, we're having a hard time with it. And I said, so you're gonna have to look at point of source generation. He said, totally 100%, we're gonna have to look at point of source generation, which means the dealerships and the rest of them, as Monadnock did, put on solar panels, and the rest of them will be doing some sort of on-site generation to help offset it, because the grid isn't gonna be able to take a line of 12 fast charge EV chargers and use it once. And that's kind of what they're up against at this time.
Yep, and any idea as to what a solar array would look like to run, say, 5 of those chargers? How big?
I couldn't even imagine.
I'm just wondering the
I
space it
couldn't
would
imagine
take.
it impossible, quite frankly.
We could find out, I'm sure, but
Yeah.
I think that the only advantage to getting old so far that I've seen is to have some rearview mirror. I never guessed I would have owned something like this in my life and what this can do. Whatever the EV charger, the technology is today, it's kind of irrelevant for what it's going to be in 2 years, in 3 years, in 4 years. It's going to change. There's no way around it. It's going to have to change, quite frankly.
But a kilowatt is a kilowatt. I mean, you can't get around that.
No
what it
question.
takes to generate that is the same amount it took 30 years ago to generate it.
There's
just
absolutely
more efficiency is the thing.
right. There's absolutely no question about that. You're 100% correct. But it's going to be curious to see what they're able to do.
Yeah.
Knowing that.
They come with the battery part of it there. I guess that's the next thing they'd have to
Onboard generation, who knows what.
hydrogen cells.
Hydrogen cells are definitely making a comeback. They kind of died away, and now they're coming back hard.
There are so many losses in transmission, right? So that it's almost going to guarantee
Right.
an increase in on-site generation.
I think the most interesting thing to keep in mind is like most great technological advances, unfortunately, come from our desire to kill people. The Pentagon is investing tons and tons and tons into this. Between the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, over half the people lost, half the soldiers lost delivering fuel.
No kidding, really?
Look that up, it's a fact. 60% for one war, 40% for the other.
Yeah.
So it averages out to half of them lost transporting fuel. And that is not new to war. I mean, it's cut off the supply. It's an old technique. And we have things like the Seawolf submarine, which when you think about it, technologically is an absolute marvel. And the Pentagon is spending probably more money than anybody right now on alternative fuels for that purpose.
I think on-site generation is kind of where we're, where we'd eventually want to be 20, 50, or 100 years from now.
Again, with
Swanzey.
solar.
Yeah. Well, I mean, who knows how, like Mike said, who knows how things change. Technology doesn't stand still.
Yeah.
But solar right now is, it's on the leading edge, and it gets cheaper all the time. So, I mean, if we're gonna regionalize or centralize our energy production, I don't know any other way to do that. I mean, they don't have mini nukes that we can put in each community. It seems like solar power is the way to localize your energy. The technology is going to change. We have no idea. Like Mike said, our phones have more computing power than the Apollo 11 had. So it's just amazing. But we appreciate the time. We appreciate being able to just talk.
Yeah, we appreciate the input, and for sure, if we see something that needs to, or you think needs to be put into our zoning, let us know before we start discussing zoning so we can.
Is there an official process, a timeline from when you start for next town meeting? Do you have things on your plate for zoning ordinance amendments and changes?
Not right now. We've already gone through that time. Yeah. Time frame is up. So come in the middle of the summer.
Yeah,
give us enough time.
We could take a break for a while.
I have a couple questions. Number one is, you talked about that your committee serves as a clearinghouse for helping people find reputable installers.
Well, no, we won't do that.
You don't do that.
We help people we discuss with them what to look for.
Okay.
We can tell them what to look for, but I would not recommend.
Okay, so, but I didn't know that you did that. So, and that to me, you know, if I'm looking to put in a solar array, I would come and talk to you, but now I know that I can. So I wonder if you're making the public aware of that, like in the newsletter or the annual report or something?
We have the annual report basically says we want you to come talk to us.
Great.
We are in the Swanzey Uncovered every, 2 months it comes out, or every 4 months when it comes out. So we try to let folks know.
We've talked about coming up with like a web page or something for the town website that just has some information about where to learn more about the IRA
Inflation
rebates
adjustment.
and credits and things like that. And I actually I'm about to schedule a energy audit. So my way of learning about all this, so I can share it, is I just scheduled an energy audit for our 220-year-old house, and we're going to go through the process, I hope, over the next
Just walk around
few
with
years.
candles to see where the drafts are.
Yeah, that's one way to do it. But anyway, you know, I'd like to write about that and have that information and that sort of experience available to the town. So we've talked about ways to deliver that.
We do have a small budget, so we would like to develop some sort of mailers to go to everyone and, you know, give them some websites and some resources and things like that.
The website is nice, the town website, because it's permanent, you know, I'm not gonna lose it after I stick it on my refrigerator for a while.
We have a lot of people in Swansea too that are doing interesting things. We've had one guy I've been trying to get to come in who, you know, did a ground mounted array on his own just so he could charge his Tesla out on Flatwood Mill Road. I think that was legal, right?
Sure.
Yeah. But I would love, like, people like him, I would like to get in, you know, just to pick his brain, and because that's sort of, you know, backyard project anybody can do if they're interested. And I'd love to know how much it cost him, but now, you know, outside of the cost for the array, he's not paying to charge his car anywhere, which is pretty neat.
So the second thing I was thinking about, we're talking about zoning, you know, being involved in the zoning process, but if there's anything that comes up that would be appropriate to amend our site plan review regulations, I think that would be useful for us to know if you've got some recommendations on how to accommodate charging stations and site plans.
I think we have some
And,
ideas.
you know, we're talking with other
Yeah.
towns, I'm sure you'll be doing that.
Yeah. I would love to, I think that's something that we should do, is review all the zoning ordinances, site plan review and all that, and see maybe if there's suggestions we can make. I haven't really dived too deep into that stuff.
Well, John Condos from Clean Energy New Hampshire he's been a really good advisor, and he's somebody who's a resource like you discussed in terms of, you know, language to help a town sort of get ahead of some of these things, and, you know,
And having a membership in Clean Energy New Hampshire means we could ask John to sit down with us and let's go over the site plan review process and see if there's things we can do better.
Wonderful, thank you.
And again, like Scott said, we don't want to mandate, but we want to make it amenable to EV infrastructure and renewables. So.
Good.
Swansea's changing, Swansea's growing. You guys probably hear it all the time. I appreciate the work you do.
We hear it from both ends.
Yeah, I appreciate the work you do, and I know that what you do, you guys are following, you know, the letter of the ordinances, and that's important. And I wish more people understood that. You know, you can only do what's in the book, so to speak. So
We pass it along every chance we get.
And you know, one thing outside of the Energy Commission is, you know, wondering what the impact of developing multi-units has on our school district budget. I think that's something that I would love to look at. Is that something that you can ask? When they come in with 200 units, do you ask them what the impact is on the schools?
We have before, we're gonna be discussing impact fees tonight, as a matter of fact, but we don't have impact fees in this town.
Well, I'm not sure I like impact fees myself, because it's really not a steady source of income. It's a one-time payment usually, right?
Yeah.
I'm just more interested, if someone comes in with 200 units, are they bringing 50 kids into the school system? What does that do to the?
We've had one project that we got that information from the Finley project over on Stafford Drive. They went with Monadnock and they gave us a feedback. They also gave us a financial statement of about approximately what they think everything's gonna come down to. and they're talking about 10 kids.
Well, that's not bad.
But they did go with the school board. Well, it's hard to say, but that is a market rate, and those apartments are gonna be very expensive.
Well, we got 84 units here.
Right,
By
but
tomorrow, it's
I
still-
don't believe there's gonna be a lot of kids in there, maybe because it's 1 and 2 bedrooms mostly. And what, we say like 12,
Studio.
yeah,
So of the 500, roughly 500 that have been approved,
Yeah.
all of them are 3-bedroom.
Well, you know, and that's just, you know, as a member of the school board budget committee, I'm always concerned when you say 500 new units, does that mean 500 new kids? You know?
no,
And you know, as a member of the budget committee, you're 7% under enrolled right now.
Well, the school has told us that they have room. So that's what we've been told by the school board, but I'm sure that
7%
people
under
still,
enrollment, you would have the room and
yeah,
everything works at max efficiency when it's maxed out.
when you have more students, it's better.
but we can ask projects when I come in, if they're a large scope, we can ask them for financial statement, and kids and stuff like that.
I don't have anything.
And that's part of the impact fee thing, is that if they're gonna come in and we know that they're gonna be an increase in children, the impact fee would help offset any infrastructure, or if you had to build a school bigger, let's say, then those fees could be used for that purpose.
They have to be. Yeah.
Right, they have to be,
Designated for
yes.
that.
We have to set up accounts.
Yes, very
The
specific.
first thing we had to do, and we do have it already, is the CIPC program, the Capital Improvement Committee. That's the first thing we have to have established before we can do impact fees, which we have that already.
Uh-huh.
And then we have to look at how we're gonna structure those fees.
Does the state have limits on impact fees? What's the, how do you?
They don't limit the amount.
Guidelines?
No, they don't limit the amount. They have guidelines on, you have to have set up certain accounts, and that has to go, they cannot go to the general fund. It has to go to certain accounts. Like on Sanford Drive there, they gave us some money to help redo Sanford Drive. Okay, that money has to go for those road improvements. And if we had
That was not an impact fee, though.
there's not an impact fee, it was an agreed to fee.
And we can do that,
Right.
and we have done that with developers, rather than having impact fees.
Right.
They have agreed to do certain things, fix this or that intersection or something like that. Yeah, Market Basket, they've done that, so
Right.
in lieu of impact fees.
We actually did get some money from the state for this development over here. We got $840,000 left.
$10,000 a unit.
Yeah, so that I believe could go to the general fund, correct?
You can do town, can do.
Because that's
anything they
state
want
money,
with it,
that's
right?
state money, that's not impact fees.
Yeah.
Well, it's not.
Where's it going?
It's being used like fund balance.
Yeah, that's, the select board did have a public hearing on that,
Things like that.
which they're required to do.
I think someone's going over here to, Winchester. Does that sound right, Mike? California?
Sorry?
The California Street, Winchester Street.
Road?
Road bond, isn't some of that?
The money from the apartments we have in the state.
I'm gonna have to agree on that, but
I've seen it in different places.
I thought it was designated strictly for infrastructure work.
It's all infrastructure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would like some public input when we do this, we're just starting discussions on it.
Yeah.
Public input would be great on what they think about it.
I want to know if we're moved on to impact fees, I do have some questions.
Sam, let's hear them.
Yeah,
I mean, we're gonna be.
it's on our agenda for tonight.
Well, is it something that has to be written into the town ordinance to?
It has to be a
Yes,
separate
yes.
ordinance by itself.
And so we don't have that right now, so
No.
you can't require an impact fee. But you can ask them to say, this road needs work.
Yep.
Would you be willing to fix it? What if they said no?
They usually say yes. If they said no, then they say no, and we give them a hard time, and, you know.
So do you have proposed language for impact fees? Is that, or are you just sort of just ground level?
We're just talking, we've discussed it throughout the years.
Is this something we want to do?
We've
Why
never
now?
instituted it, and we're gonna discuss again tonight, just, might wanna bring it up, so we're gonna
Yeah.
discuss it.
Well, that was just my big question. What's the step, again, statutory authority for the town to be able to do that?
Well, if you want,
RSA gives us the authority to do
yeah,
it.
the RSA
You
is,
have to have it in your zoning ordinance.
We have to have a separate impact fee ordinance,
Okay.
right,
and that would be in the zoning ordinance.
it's
But that would be
under 274, :21B,
74, yeah.
674, yeah.
So that
Say
would
something.
potentially be something that would be on the warrant next year to approve the amendment to require impact fees, if you
Yeah, it
decide.
depends on how
Yeah.
everything, goes with discussing it, and
I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about impact fees.
I think there's a lot of bookkeeping that goes along with it as well.
Yeah.
So we have to discuss it probably.
What kind of percentage? Is there like a percentage? Is there an algorithm that you would use?
I think it's whatever the town itself comes up with as to how much it charges for what.
Wow.
And there's a couple of different ways you can do it. You can do it by square footage.
Uh-huh.
But it has to, I think the town has to show that their project is gonna impact that specific thing. It can't just be that, like Mike brought up, that the school system is 7% under. We'd probably have a hard time charging an impact fee when the school system is a little bit low like that.
Uh-huh.
So you have to show
that
that
purpose,
you have the spot for it, and you have to use it within, I think, 6 years, or you have to give it back.
Well, could you require like a new fire truck?
No, you can't. You can require,
You can put it in the capital reserve for the fire trucks.
yes,
Right.
but again, if it's not used in 6 years, you have to give it back.
It's got to be used in 6 years, correct?
You don't always make sure it's used.
Well, what's the idea for impact fees then? What are you all thinking? What would you use the money for? And why would you ask for it in the first place?
The money would be used for specific things, like if it were, if there needed to be a road improvement for that project going in there, drainage issues, things like that, that it was going to affect, and that the town could show that this project was going to put more strain on that and it was going to affect the surrounding properties, then you could charge them the impact fee for that. School system is the other thing. Water and sewer is the other thing. If you can show that their project is going to impact the plant. It can't be used for general upgrades to the plant. It's got to be used for whatever specifically that project is going to do. To the
Right
plant.
now, we have a water problem here in West Swansea where projects coming in, it's very difficult for them to hook up to the water system. So if you got a project coming in, you say, okay, we got to improve the water so we can put a fire suppression system in and all this other stuff. Then you could charge fees for that.
Yeah, user fees.
So far, that's a private system, though. You can't charge it for the private system. The town would have to own
The
it.
private system, yeah, no,
Yeah,
would
the
have
town-
to own that system.
The town would have to own that water system to charge impact.
Which it looks like we're headed that way almost.
Might be.
Yeah.
So you can't just use the money on anything. You can't just throw it in the general fund.
No.
It has to be designated.
Can't go in the general fund by
Yeah.
statute.
So I think we've moved on to impact fees. So Mike, you want to bring on?
Well, you know, I've talked with a couple of, the selectmen, there's only two really active right now, and they asked me to bring it up, and I agree, I think we're actually past the time we should have. We could have had, we could have had some money for infrastructure, like on the Finley project, we got voluntary money from that one.
Yep.
And that was good. It did help with Safford Drive. But I think we need it basically, the town's gonna grow. There's a lot of people in town don't want the town to grow, but it's gonna grow. You know, pressure's gonna put us on us to grow. And I think we need to have something in place for the improvements that we'll need to do, like sewage and water. You know, it's gonna have to be extended eventually. And we talked once here about extending sewage all the way from Market Basket down through. Because
You're talking about?
sewer, right.
From
Sewer.
Market Basket down to there.
Did we discuss that one time?
It might have been water. I don't know, yeah, but anyways.
Well, whichever one it was.
Yep.
If we owned the water, or because we own the sewer, then we could have fees to help do that when somebody wanted to come in. And if, say, Forrest wanted to, like we talked about, them possibly selling off lots out from the side of the road down through, and we could get businesses in there to help the town out. And then you would have a way to get some infrastructure done and paid for. Because fees could be used for that. Don't know how long.
It's, again, there's that 6-year limit on using those impact
That's correct.
fees, and you have to show that it's affecting that portion of whatever you're trying to fix up.
That's
or
correct.
trying to
That is
improve.
correct.
Tax increment zones like we have over here in the industrial park are probably more fitting for something like a project that size that you're talking
Right.
about down Route 10 or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, the impact fees, I don't know, it's, in one way, it's a big headache, I think. If the developers are willing to pitch into whatever they're, like these guys up here with the road and sewer extensions or however, if they're still willing to pitch in for stuff like that, then I don't know that we have to go down that road of impact fees.
In the statute, when they talk about off-site improvements, which is what you're talking
Yeah.
about, it says they shall be limited to any necessary highway, drainage, and sewer and water upgrades pertinent to that development. So that would exclude things like schools or parks or,
I think
No.
school systems.
Schools, in there, if you read on,
Yeah.
there is a section in there about talking about schools.
for off-site exactions.
It would be our percentage of the
I'm just
region.
talking about off-site, not impact fees, but off-site exactions.
It's in there somewhere what you actually can do with the schools. Because you can, if you had to add on to the school, or the school got to a certain size, you had to put an addition on the school because this many kids were coming in, improve your septic system. Because we still have septic fields, I believe, over there at the high school. So if you had to increase that, because they were only built for so many people, those are the kind of things you could use
Right,
fees for.
with impact fees, but I was just talking about off-site exactions, which is a
Offsets,
separate thing.
okay, yeah.
Are you on page 408?
409,
Look on 408,
where that's,
starting with number 5. You read,
yeah,
that
which
says
describes
includes-
what impact fees can
it includes
do.
public schools.
Right, impact fees do,
Yes,
But
and it has, and going down further, under C, sub C, it has to be spent solely for those
right,
items.
right, but if you go to J on the following page, if you fail to adopt an impact fee ordinance, which is what Scott was talking about, we're going along, you can still require developers to pay an exaction for the cost of off-site improvements determined by the planning board to be necessary.
Okay, I see where she is, yeah. Yeah.
And that's a separate thing, that's what we've been doing
Separate
right
thing,
along, is what
right.
Scott was saying. But that is limited
Right.
to highway, drainage, sewer, and water upgrades pertinent to that development.
Correct.
So it's not applicable to, say, you want to put in a new playground somewhere else in town, or, more sort of general benefits. It's just kind of infrastructure that relates to that being built.
That's right. And Mike,
I think Stefan's actually done a lot of work on this, he's being kind of quiet and modest over there. But I think you got that fee schedule from Lebanon.
Right.
You put that in front of everybody. I just think that's kind of just an interesting thing to kind of just see how the county's actually using this. Not promoting it, not putting it down, but saying this is an actual example of how one does it. As a former selectman, I can tell you, Bob's point is the one-time, it's one-time injection. However, so is a grant. So I always believe that one-time money should be spent on one-time expenses.
Correct.
Communities run into trouble when they get these one-time monies and then they start, you've got to be careful how you offset taxes and all the rest of that stuff, because then you kind of get addicted to it. And all of a sudden you get this big bump that nobody saw coming because, well, we've been living off the fat of the land. So it's really important, no matter how the planning board does this, and I know you would, is talk to the planning, or talk to the select board and see how they would integrate these into the budget so that it was a real benefit. Your point about the record keeping of it is really, really bang on, because it would be fun to listen to Teresa and just to see her and some of her people and what they've been through as far as keeping track of this stuff. Because it's no small matter to keep track of money in this town. I don't think people understand how hard Teresa and Lisa, and to even a lesser extent Kevin, work every day managing our money, making sure that all the forms and all the reporting, it's an arduous task.
I'm sure it is. Yep. And right, this would add a fair amount more to it.
Step on.
Care to enlighten us?
I do want to do more research on it. So the population for Lebanon is about 15,000. And even at that, I feel as though some of these fees are a little up there. I think they're a little up there.
Up there.
Because, let's see, for a single family, 324. And at that square footage, it's like
3,000 square foot house is 10 grand.
10 grand. You're paying,
Of impact fees?
Yeah,
what's that?
the building permit's about 1,400.
It's like
that's
6%, a little modest.
That's split up between schools, recreation, police.
Yeah, we had it all up to 364 square foot or something.
324.
So if you're in the rural ag district and you just paid 80 grand for a building lot, and you haven't even done a driveway or a well or a septic, and then I'm gonna hit you 10 grand plus a building permit.
Yeah, but we don't have to be unreasonable with our fees. If we did it, we could have more reasonable fees.
100%. That's not
Reasonable fees have a way of becoming unreasonable over time.
True. Could institute a cap.
Bureaucratic growth.
Yeah,
You have to pay
Something like that.
reasonable if your neighbor. has
keep it to the inflation rate.
You're right.
Or term, something.
Yeah, Stephanie just brought up a good point. You could put a cap on those fees, and link it to the inflation rate.
I'm wondering about Lebanon. Did you talk with the people in Lebanon? And what I'm curious about is how did they decide that they needed to have impact fees? What considerations did they go to?
That I'm unsure of. I did not talk to them. I talked to people at a planning conference and I was just trying to source information about impact fees and they just pointed me in that direction.
Do you know if the city of Keene has gone that route? Anybody? I
Actually,
haven't heard that.
I did ask them before.
I could get some information. I know the chair of the planning board very well.
Not that I'm aware of.
You know,
I don't wanna think ill of my neighbors and friends in Lebanon, but I could also see where they could be viewed as snobbery.
well, impact fees have been a way to control development throughout the years that they've been allowed in New Hampshire here, probably in other states as well, but it's been a way that towns have used to
Control growth.
development and growth in the town.
I'm sure Hanover has them.
Probably, yeah, I don't know.
On the flip side, I sent Stefan a link to Business Insider about Newport, New Hampshire, and Jack Frank's. And they were asking for $96,000 for his 42 units for water sewer connection fees. So we sued and they settled for $29,000.
Really?
Yes. And then Ruger Mill, which is up the street, I guess, was $164,000 initially, and they settled for $49,000.
So they couldn't justify, they
Well,
lost in court because they couldn't justify where it was going, that the need for it.
right.
It's gotta be why they lost.
So
So
they
they
probably
They were
did
kind of
make
making it
sure.
up on the spot is why they lost.
Yeah, again, yeah, you have to be able to justify your numbers. We charge such and such per square foot because of,
It needs to be equal
Anywhere.
for everyone
you know,
across the board to be.
establish a precedent, you probably want to stick with it, you know.
Was that an impact fee though?
Yeah, water
So
sewer.
they do have an
Yeah.
ordinance.
Well, they were looking for an impact fee for water and sewer, I don't know.
Okay, so it could have been one of those upsides actually.
It's another part of it, it's extra work to do to justify the impact fee as well, and to keep it justified. And I'm sure it changes from year to year. I don't know if these guys adjust these rates from year to year or out, or they just keep them all the time, but it would seem to me you'd have to run them every single year to see where recreation was, where police was, where fire was, and their needs, and what they do have and don't have.
So I talked to some of the people in the planning staff in Keene, and they said one of the major problems was the 6-year limit on holding the money. It just makes it difficult for the municipality to spend the funds.
You know, it's a time limit, but it's put in there, the RSA is just so.
Yep.
Towns can't just grab the money and just hang on to it for kind of length of time.
No, it's got to be spent in 6 years.
The two separate rulings, but the largest one was with the City of Atlanta, National Association of Home Builders. Atlanta was using building permits basically as a profit center, and made it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court basically said, look, you can't be charging more than the top cost to operate the department-ish, within reason. And that's when, I mean, it's not when impact fees came by, but that's when people started going to the impact fee versus the building permit. And the specificity, because that was viewed as more reasonable, that you're charging, but it's for a reason. It's not just to bring in general fund money, it's to bring in for specific purposes, which is a reasonable.
Yeah, if you can show where it's going, yeah.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
I would fall back on a cliche, but it seems like if it ain't broke, why fix it? It seems like things have been working well. You know, I don't know why we want to institute impact fees that might scare off developers the minute they see that we charge impact fees. I'd rather, you know, like you said, work with who comes to town. And it seems like everybody's been pretty reasonable.
So far, to my recollection, they have. You know, we have our certain developers that aren't. I just, you know, come across them sometimes.
Were you on for Ryan's gas tanks on Route 10 and Sawyer's Crossing Road? Were you on this board?
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
So how did I know they bought some hose for the fire department and they put in that.
Down on the river, they put
Dry hydrant.
dry hydrant, you guys call it. Yeah, they put that in for the fire department. So, yeah, so it's
Probably
it works.
in the $50,000-$60,000 range then, something like that.
I don't know. You're probably right. I don't know what it would have cost to
That
do
was
it.
25 years ago, maybe?
If that, I don't know, was that one?
Yeah, 'cause I was on the.
Yeah, might have been.
Seems like a balancing act between what's the benefit to taking impact fees, but what are we losing if we scare people off? Rather than if they just come to town and we work with them, there's more of a benefit, a long-term benefit, especially when it comes to taxes. We can get more industry, more warehouses. I'm okay with that. I mean, they're not bringing kids to the school district, they're just paying property taxes.
That's right. Think about the businesses.
And like I said again, if it's not broke, why fix it at this point?
Working with the select board a few years ago, we did building permit fees. And we did them to try and get more in line with like communities, but mostly King, of course. And to make it, again, try to more reflect the amount of time it takes me to deal with certain things. So the business fees went down and the residential fees went up because it may be hard to believe, but somebody's 20 by 20 addition that they're doing on their own can be a lot more time consuming than say a really large commercial project. So we now give them also credit if they have engineered stamp plans and third-party testing, because if you have third-party testing, I'm gonna get all that third-party testing. So it takes a lot of the pressure off of me to be there looking at everything, because they're already paying tens of thousands of dollars for somebody else to do that, and we'll get that information. And the residential went up, so, you know, we've been watching these a long time, we've been trying to keep them as equitable as possible as it relates to the time it's required by the building department, which I think is, you know, it's not perfect, but.
No, that's what it's all about though, right? You gotta cover your expenses.
Right.
Yeah.
And the location,
Yeah.
sorry.
It sounds as though you've been able to work with developers to provide necessary additional infrastructure like sidewalks or road improvements or things like that so far. As long as that goes on, then that seems to be the way to go for all the reasons that Bob said, that you develop a relationship with the developer and so on. What happens if somebody just, wants to put something on a roadway where there's not enough, pavement health to handle the traffic or whatever, and they refuse because it'd be a huge cost to them to improve the road? You have no option.
Yeah, we do. We can deny it.
You can deny it, okay,
On those
well,
grounds.
that's what I was gonna ask you, whether you would deny something like that for those grounds.
If it was clearly gonna be a large expense of the town or something like that, I think the planning board probably would. I can't speak for the rest of them.
Can
But
we truly deny, I thought it was like the town's obligation to provide functional infrastructure.
it depends on the circumstances. It's case by case.
Okay.
But it's talking about cases, if the town has a case or the planning board has a case that this road cannot handle that kind of traffic, and unless it's brought up to specs, the building project which is going at the end of the road will say, won't work, then the planning board can deny it on those, and they can go to the courts and.
So long as the road is of sufficient quality to handle what's already happening,
Or
then we have
even-
no obligation to bring it up to the next level that new guy would require.
And it doesn't have to be a road, you know, if it were, we'll say the sewer system down
Yeah.
here.
Right.
If the town could prove that the sewer system is basically at capacity with, we'll say, records from the plant, so on, you know, all that type of stuff, then the planning board could deny on that too. They may lose in court, may not lose in court, depends on what the records and stuff look like.
I think Scott's point is really important that, because I understand what you're saying, Victoria, and I don't think you're wrong either. So outside planning board got in a lot of trouble. Cell tower wants to come to town. A couple of the members of the planning board suggested that maybe if the police were able to put a repeater up there, they'd be more likely to vote for it. That's extortion.
Yeah, but I think we're trying to do it different.
Right, well, no, I'm just saying though that was versus the necessity of a road that can't handle the traffic, or a septic or sewer system that can't handle the flow, versus just extortion.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's talking about extortion.
No, but I'm just saying that you gotta be careful with that stuff, because, well, like flat lease project, is a perfect example, if they said, no, we're not gonna give you money for that, we might have had a hard time. Because it would have been tough, that's a tough one.
It would have been a toughie.
And Roxbury's going for Middletown Road, right? Aren't they in court now, or
I don't know, I think.
a developer wants to put something, some large development?
Yeah, the developer will.
Middletown
Well,
Road.
I don't know.
And Middletown Road is not a
Yeah,
good road
that's
for
okay.
development, so Roxbury said no.
And I think they prevailed too.
I think they
I'm pretty sure.
Did they?
The house
The
is in favor of the developer.
So what I was trying to, no,
Yeah,
I'm not sure this works because it might be extortion. But what if you had the sort of talk to the developer, try to get them to help out with the things that need to be done to make the project work? And you also had impact fees. You said, look, you know, let's work together to get this done. But if you don't, we may have to, because of our needs as a town, impose an impact fee.
I think it'd have to be one or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have impact
I
fees.
just throw that out as
You're
well.
right, yeah.
It sounds more like extortion to me.
It'd be one or the other.
It had to be the worst
point.
way.
So you can't have the ability to charge impact fees and not charge impact fees if you can work out a deal.
It'd be that the board would have to waive the impact fees and have, when the applicant says, well, we'll do this on our own, okay, your fees are waived.
Yeah, and
That's what I was
they're,
gonna say, with a location, if we have something like Webb, it's on a state highway, they have their own water, their own septic system, they have no kids going through the school. How can we charge them an impact fee? Why would we want to? Right,
Yeah.
and then why would
right,
we?
why would we want to, that's true on that, yeah.
So Sly, could you almost do it like you would with a pilot?
Right.
So you have the impact fees, but then you have a pilot system to relieve the impact fee.
Right, we have to, by statute, we have to offer a waiver option. That has to be part of the package.
So you still
Can't
got
get us over the 6 years.
Yeah, still have that, yeah. And as far as that state road goes, I don't believe the impact fees can go to the state highways.
No, it can't,
Has to be
it
town
can't,
stuff.
has to be town stuff.
Yeah.
That and interstates, it can't go on either one of them.
So, I don't know. I like to leave well enough alone as well.
I don't feel like, I could really make a case for it, and I think we've had this situation, something comparable in the past, where, for example, the housing right here in West, right, where there really wasn't much space for recreational facilities for children. And I know they did a little something, but had we had impact fees at that time, we could have said, and if it were a different development, but we could have required that money be put into, say, recreational facilities off-site but close by, that would,
Well, the impact fees would be for the town to do that,
right.
not necessarily the developer doing
Right,
it.
but we could have gotten the money that would have enabled the town to increase the recreational opportunities for, a big increase in population of young children who didn't have any place to go. But that's a theoretical argument for it.
Yeah, that's what they're used for.
But we don't seem to have that kind of pressure. There's no children. Yeah. Right.
What else? impact fees.
Well, I just brought this up because I thought it merited a discussion.
Yeah, and throughout the years, we've discussed it on the board.
Right.
And that issue, and
And from time to time, we'll have to bring it up just to see where we're
I
at.
think it might be really useful, but once you get a discussion, you see,
sometimes not, yeah.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But yeah, you can still pursue it and look to see how it's addressed in other towns to give us
I
more
think
information on it.
I could definitely talk to OPD, and then I believe when you're looking at impact fees before they're implemented, the first thing you do is like a community needs and facilities study.
Oh,
Yeah, that's,
really, on,
Even if you have a capital improvements program?
yeah, really.
We're doing a
I
water.
believe so. It's like a
That's
feasibility,
right.
you know, cover your butt.
All right. Well, if nothing more on the impact fees,
Our estimate for replacing most of the main water mains, so to speak, on the main roads in North Swansea is $5.7 million. We have been doing impact fees. We're gonna keep doing them, but hopefully we'll get some work done.
let's see, how about the extension up Route 32, where the fire station is?
If the
Or
fire
fire
station
station
bond
maybe.
goes through, it's $180,000.
That's what that would cost.
And then maybe the developer next door with the 32 units might get in on it.
I would think he would want to get in on that, yeah, unless he's already,
Well, he does
Well,
small sightings, I think. But
yeah, we
has
have
to
to
drill
double
it.
that over there.
But Webb got 50 gallons a minute, I guess.
What's that?
Webb got 50
I'm
gallons a
not
minute.
surprised there.
yeah, I'm not surprised there, no.
The site super was all kinds of bummed out in a lot of ways, because he's like, as soon as they hear how much water that is, they're gonna wanna add so much to the show. Because everything works in their showroom.
Right.
Okay, let's talk about our site plan review regulations. And this has to do with what we talked about with senior housing development over here. The one that we're talking about our last meeting, that we gave them an approval. And then they came in for a compliance hearing, and that was, I think, other things were approved on that meeting there. And it has to do with their yearly, the 1 year limit on the approval. So we need to tweak something in our regulations just to confirm how that all works. And we missed it the last time. So, and it's not very much. So your site plan regulations, go to page 13. Actually, page 12, the conditional approval on page 12. No, so let's, go to page 11 and 12 on the site plan regs.
Running late.
That's all right. This is a small matter, we're just discussing it. We can't do anything. We have to have a public hearing on it, but we need to discuss it to see what we're gonna do. If we all decide what we wanna do, next meeting, we can have a public hearing on it, and then when that goes through, then we can change the ordinance.
Okay, going back to Jane's question. I'm referring to the minutes where we said we were gonna get legal consultation on this. Is this what is this going to be involving that?
We usually run this by legal, and we had them, when we redid our regulations, like last year, we ran them through legal.
Okay, from what I understand, we did get something back from legal, did we not?
For the board,
For what?
for the board.
Meaning what? This is the one.
This is more.
Oh, it's not for a public hearing?
No.
I mean, public,
No.
sentiment? Okay, well. Anyways, let's discuss this. Page 11, page 12. On page 11, the approval starts, it talks about the approval was the old section 10. And then we go on to page 12, and it's under C. And that would say site plan approval will be valid for 1 year after the date upon which the board voted to approve, provided that, and blah, 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 blah. But the important thing is that when the board votes to approve a site plan, that's when that clock starts. It's not when the chairman signs it or it becomes final as in the RSA's after conditions have been met or something like that, they talk about final approval. The approval is made when a motion is made and the motion is passed on the affirmative and that a site plan has gone through. That's when that 1-year clock starts.
Okay, question. All right, so we vote to approve, but we vote to approve conditional upon blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So it's that initial vote to approve.
That's what it is, but we have to tweak that in our regulations, because if we go to page 13, where we talk about conditional approval, we have very top there, let's see, it says, on item B, it says, if a conditional approval has been granted pursuant to number 6A in this section, which is on the other page, the conditions need to be met within 1 year, or the approval is null and void, and the applicant must resubmit the application. So I think in there, we should go, well, let's go to the next paragraph. Paragraph C says, if the conditions are met within the 1-year time frame, the approval becomes final without further public hearing, and the applicant has 1 year from that date to demonstrate active and substantial development as defined in approval 6C on the next page. I think we should take that paragraph out completely. We don't need it in there at all.
See, you're talking about C?
Yeah, talking about taking C out, because again, it's ambiguous as to when the time limit runs out there. So if we take C out and add this into item B, and I'm going to go up to B again, paragraph B, if a conditional approval has been granted pursuant to 6A in this section, the conditions need to be met within 1 year, and then add in after the date upon which the board voted to approve, which is we have on the prior page.
Original
approval date. It's still, even though they met the conditions, it still has from that date of the approval. Let's see, so null and void, and it tells them that if they didn't make the conditions within that 1 year of approval, then it's null and void automatically, no matter what, no extensions, nothing at all, just null and void automatically. I have that in there. So that lets it set in there that on the date of approval, which is what we say under C, they have that 1 year to do the substantial development to the property, or active substantial development. And they can also ask for a 1 year extension if they apply within 30 days of that one running out from that date when it's approved, not when the chairman signs it.
That's much more clear.
Go ahead.
What I'm going to say is going to get into something that we can't talk about right now.
I don't see why we can't talk about it. What's the problem? I mean, we're talking about something that's already been approved, right? We approved that over there. We aren't talking about anything that, that the public shouldn't be aware of. It's a public meeting, we're a public board, this is the town, this is everybody's town. Unless there's something that you think. We're talking about the approval over to the senior housing over by the airport.
Correct.
And we're talking about whether or not their 1 year is running out at this date.
Has
run out this date or that day. But if you read our site plan regs, they have not run out. I mean, where in here do you think that they have run out? It's because of the initial approval, right?
Right, that's what you just said.
Yeah, I did, but in our regulations, it says if the conditions are met, this is the one we're taking out. It says in our current regulations, if the conditions are met within 1 year time frame, which they met the conditions at that hearing.
Not all the conditions. They have not met all the conditions.
They haven't yet, okay.
To my knowledge, they have not met all their conditions yet.
So if we leave C in there, then they even get more of an extension.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying you can't take that out, but what you're just asking or saying or stating is that within that 1 year period, they have met their conditions.
And their conditions they haven't met is that they have not presented the updated drawings of the landscaping and the parking. That's what you're talking about?
That plus other conditions, the deed restriction.
Okay, those conditions, yeah, they are administrative.
I know, but still, it is a condition that was put on the initial approval.
And if those conditions aren't met, they do not get a CO. They can still go with the project, but we're getting beyond ourselves there.
Yeah, well, okay.
I want to correct that for a second.
Go ahead.
They don't get a building permit.
Oh, they don't even get the building permit?
No.
Oh,
No,
I didn't know
can't
that.
possibly wait for somebody to build a $100 million project get it done and they go, oh, I'm sorry, I'm missing my FAA letter.
Okay,
And
thank
they don't
you,
get a permit.
thank you.
Right.
Okay, that clarifies it a little bit more, but let's get back down to that paragraph C. This is what we're talking about now. You're thinking that they've run out of time for their 1 year conditional approval.
Correct.
So, and I'm saying they haven't because of what we have in our regulations. And again, if the conditions are met within 1 year, so you say they haven't met the conditions. So they haven't met the conditions yet. That is, what was it, was it July 2nd, something like that?
That was-
Meeting was?
Yeah.
It was that meeting there. They were still waiting on stuff that was decided at that meeting there.
We allowed them to change
The parking.
2 items.
Yeah, two things were changed.
Okay. So,
I wasn't there at that meeting, I know I read the
Yeah, right.
minutes there.
But at that July meeting, they would have met everything that we asked them to. That's why they were coming back.
no, because you still had the administrative conditions that they have not met.
Yeah, but as far as us, we were concerned at that meeting, if we never gave them that 20% reduction and then putting in more trees or whatever the hell it was, that they would have been all approved
That was,
because they had
that was just,
everything.
that was one of the conditions. That was the compliance part of the conditions that we listed. Okay,
Right.
so that's only one part of what we asked for.
But that part you're talking about there was for the compliance hearing, because the rest of the conditions were administrative and they did not require a compliance hearing. And as far as I know, the rest of those conditions, which are permits, they had met. They had those permits at that compliance hearing, I think from the minutes. And I'm looking for them, I guess I don't have the minutes and stuff here from that.
Do we know, did they have the FAA approval? Mike?
They don't even know, and that I'm aware of. I mean, they don't even own the property yet, so.
Right, so,
No?
You know, haven't closed on it yet.
so they could not have met the conditions.
So I feel like we're doing the same thing that we did at our last meeting, which just baked my brain. So I'm wondering, we did get an opinion and opinion
Yes.
from legal, and you had that, but we can't discuss
Correct.
that in a public meeting?
And that opinion, I'm not gonna ask you to say what it was, but that opinion had to do with whether their time has run out or not?
It did.
That's what it had to do with, right? Okay, and they give opinion on that, okay,
So
so.
maybe it would be helpful to find out what the opinion is.
Well, yeah,
We'll leave. Yeah, we'll leave.
no,
Um,
it won't be helpful for this, because I think we need to change the site plan regs.
Yeah,
And
so
we
two
get
different
to that and
things.
change that.
Can
The
you
other
email
thing-
that to us?
no,
Well, wait a minute.
No, I mean, not
If
right
it's-
now.
if it's confidential, I don't-
Or something.
I don't
Can
think
I
that-
ask a
It's for the
question?
board.
If you change this now, before you hear this opinion, is it gonna open a lawsuit
No.
because you changed it after?
No, because they'll still be able to go by what our regs were at the time the decision was made.
Okay, but if you interpreted it to mean one thing, that goes one way, and now you're making it more specific, would it imply that he,
If the courts
meant-
look at it, if the courts look at the wording of your ordinance, and if it says in that word of that ordinance that they have 1 year from the time the conditions were met,
alright, so you're saying there's no doubt about the way it reads now?
not in my mind anyway. And I'm saying that that's what we need to clarify and get out of our site plan regs to make it more understandable and no question about when that clock starts running. Jane, you can say something here.
Is there any reason not to go in and, I mean, what are we gonna decide that the public might have some input for now? Anyway, we've gone over the energy
nothing.
committee and all this other stuff.
That's for a public hearing, but for a public hearing to hear the changes to our site plan regs is for a public hearing, and that's when the public has input on what we're doing here. But we're talking again about two separate things. We don't even care what the decision of the lawyer was. Right now, it has nothing to do with us. We aren't in a lawsuit. They haven't sent us a letter that they're gonna do this or that to us at all. We're just discussing tweaking our site plan regs. We don't even have to know tonight what that, what,
Right, so
you know.
I was going to just suggest then why don't we think about this? Why don't we note that we are going to change that and then do that at the next meeting?
And it has to be a public hearing. So yeah, if we're all in agreement, we're gonna take out that paragraph C and we're gonna add in just a clarification in, again, clarification in paragraph B. This is on page 13 IM, and I'll read it from the beginning again. If a conditional approval has been granted pursuant to 6A in this section, the conditions need to be met within 1 year, and I'm reading from the back page there, but we use 1 year after the date upon which the board voted to approve the plat.
The original approval.
Or, yeah, the board voted to approve or the plat or whatever, but that specifies exactly. And then it says, or the approval is null and void and the applicant must resubmit the application, regardless of anything, whether they've done any building on the lot or anything.
Is the word original actually, I didn't bring all my stuff.
No, original's not in here.
Is the word original?
I'm asking.
He said the original, I said, is the word original?
No, we need to copy right where we have under C on the page 12.
I'm sorry, I didn't bring my.
But that's all right, I'll share with you, but that's what we're using right there.
I knew Brandon would not want to make him feel bad.
Because again, the site plan approval says will be valid for 1 year after the date upon which the board voted to approve. Then it says provided that, and we have all the stuff that provided that. But we need to use that same language in here about conditional approval. And again, it would be inserted, it's the section, the conditions need to be met within 1 year after the, or 1 year after the date upon which the board voted to approve, or the approval is null and void and the applicant must resubmit the application. And that's it, right there, regardless. Then we get rid of item C, that paragraph C.
Yeah, I'm good with that, but I do have one other question, kind of out in the right field. If we get to that point where it's null and void, hypothetically, this March, we approve the 35-foot height in the zoning ordinance. This has become null and void. Does that new ordinance, zoning ordinance apply to them because they have to reapply?
You've lost me on the height thing there.
So-
We're talking about a zoning regulation and we're,
What he's saying is, what he submitted his application underneath our old zoning rules and
Which was a
regulations.
35-foot
So if
ceiling.
if he lets the clock run out on this and has to re-enter everything again, is it gonna be by those same 2020 regulations, or is it gonna be by the now current regulations, which he would not?
if the planning board has adopted these, then it'll have to be by these. I don't think the 5-year rule applies to the zoning ordinance, but I don't think it applies to our site plan regs.
Okay.
It may not, we'll probably have to get a legal thing on that if it came to a point.
So he's allowed to use the old
Zoning.
zoning.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, there's already density changes that are in effect last year.
There was a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
why he
there
was so
were, yeah.
adamant about going by those 2020
That's right,
rules and
yeah.
regulations and not the
Right.
current ones because of that.
So there's
There
a
was a-
5-year
He would have been able to do
rule?
it.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
There was a 5-year rule where the town can't change the zoning ordinance and force the developer to abide by the new zoning regulations after he started his project.
Okay, but if he hasn't started
But he hasn't
his
started
project, then that 5-year rule doesn't
I
apply.
think even with the approval, I think he has it for
Even
the 5
if
years.
he has
Even if-
failed to do anything in that.
Yeah, well, if he's failed to do it, and if his time runs out,
Mhm.
and he's failed to do it, then it starts all over again.
Okay, so there's,
It starts all over again, but my
but
question,
with the
with
new,
the new,
If his time ran out and the board did not grant him an extension, any developer, the time runs out, then it starts with the new zoning regs again. But if the developer started, on the project and stuff, then they've got 5 years protection.
Okay,
Not defined started,
It is a substantial development,
okay.
and the planning board usually
We
decides on that.
define what substantial is.
If we're gonna go that route, we need to
No,
define,
yeah.
no, I mean, this is for future.
Yeah.
If we're gonna go that route, we need to define it when we're approving the site plan.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
best for us if we do that.
Mhm.
yeah,
I think you and I are the only people here who remember the Edon Tap
oh, I do remember even.
fiasco. Well, you remember it from when it was Canyon Springs, don't you?
Yeah.
Then
Right,
it became Edon Tap, and then the Conservation Commission worked and worked and worked to finally find out that they just weren't doing any of the things they were supposed to be doing, and that I think they gave up on it totally. But it always lies there like a rash that might come back someday or something. So be aware.
Then it might be up again
Yeah,
in front of for
because
the 15th time
hasn't
under a
been
new name.
sold,
Under a new name, right, yeah.
Yeah, and now that cluster developments are becoming more popular, and even, you know, what do you call them? Conservation subdivisions, yeah. And so it might come back around, but there's a lot there to look at. We've all
Chuck
had
won't be
fun.
involved in it.
Yeah.
Chuck Beauregard will be involved in it.
Chuck, oh no, Chuck won't be, and a whole lot of people.
So we're all in agreement of that then.
Yeah, that's a
And Stefan, do you see what we're talking about there?
I didn't actually. What page is that on?
I can come
Page
into
11,
the
but-
town hall and we can just go over it and we can just put in
Sounds good.
the wording and you can just cut and paste it in there and then put on our next meeting. What is it? I don't know the date, doesn't matter what the date is, but it'll be a public hearing on the site plan review regulations.
23rd?
It may be, I don't know. I have a date back here, but it doesn't matter. I don't have to say it now because we aren't postponing anything until anything. I'm just saying that at our next meeting, one item should be a public hearing for the site plan regulations. And you and I will get together and I'll just show you those few changes there that we all talked about here.
Sounds good.
Okay. So, what else do we have? Richard, you have anything? Just a clarification on anything that, because we're done with this here.
Yeah, not pertaining to your change in the regs, but where we are on the expiration and stuff. How that.
We'll have to see where that's going there. Well, any other business that needs to be attended to this
Are you
evening?
gonna meet early and go non-public before the meeting, or after, or?
Are we going to
Do we
find
need
out
to?
tonight what the attorney said?
Well, are we being sued or something happening? Are we sending him a
I don't
letter?
know.
Or
We have to go into
It's an
non-public because the
interpretation,
public can't.
from what I understand, it's an interpretation
You just have to
of what we have in our site plan reg and what's in the RSA.
All right, we have a full board.
Why don't we leave?
Yeah, we have a full board.
You guys want to-
We'll go into non-public when, we have a full board here, we might as well do it right now. Stefan knows.
We're not gonna serve refreshments.
Actually, we have 15.
Emotional to be made? Okay. Is emotional to be made?
Thanks for coming. It's nice to have some people. Makes the room a little more comfortable.
Poor guys, and come out, everybody's gonna be gone.
Where is everybody?
Where'd everybody go?
So we need to take minutes of non-public, right? I mean, just to know what's happened. So,
Stefan will take the minutes.
Okay.
We're gonna cut the cameras
And
off.
then I believe those have to be sealed till we vote on door.
Please build our.
Yes, we do. The non-public session has to be sealed and not publicly, until we unseal it.
Okay.
2 wins is good news, 1 win.
Okay, we need a motion to go into non-public session.
So moved.
Motion by James,
James, that's fine.
seconded by Brandon.
She beat me.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, and that's cut off. Okay, so I think we're good. Fill us in, Stefan.